I'm Courtney Fallon, and welcome to The Game Plan on Reach TV, your insider guide to this week's key NFL news. In The Game Plan, I tap into the Bleav podcast network to bring you the most important information you need to know to stay in the loop. All right, we are days away from the start of the 2024 NFL Draft, and finally seeing which mock draft was correct. To help us shift through all of the breaking news leading up to the draft, let's hear from Glover Quin from the Bleav in Lions podcast. Glover, welcome back to the show. Are you ready to play an extended version of 3 and Out?
I think I am.
All right, first up, how special is it to see Detroit hosting the 2024 draft?
I mean, I think it's huge. I think the city has come a long way. I think they put a lot of time, a lot of money, a lot of resources back into the downtown area, back into the city. And they've made it to a place where now they can host an event like the draft. And so for the NFL to see the efforts that's been put into the city, see the fans and how they've responded to the Lions, and to reward them with the draft, I think it's a huge thing.
So great to see Detroit hosting this. Well, you have a great general manager up there in Detroit as well. GM Brad Holmes has the golden touch over the last couple of years, drafting 5 Pro Bowlers over that period. How important has it been to the recent success of the franchise?
I mean, it's been huge. He's come in and he's been doing this thing in the draft. He's found great pieces to fit with what they want to do. He's found great supplemental pieces to help and fill in the gap. His first round picks have been really good. His late round picks have been really good. Him and Dan Campbell, they've had a really good approach with what they want to do, and they've executed. I think their plan and what they've tried to do has been spot on, and they've executed those plans, and then they've seen results on the field with that. So I will hope that they can continue this year and they can, draft another one.
Not your typical spot to pick in for Detroit. When you do good during the season, you pick at the end of the first round. So let me ask you for a little insight, some intel, or whatever you're just feeling. Who do you think that the Lions will take with the 29th pick in this year's draft?
Oh man, I don't know. I think they'll go corner. Losing Cam Sutton, I think they need to go and get a cornerstone piece at the corner position. I think they're pretty solid offensively at the running back, the wide receiver, the tight end, the O-line. I think they're pretty solid in all those places. I think they're pretty solid on the D-line. They've added some pieces in free agency. I think the linebackers are pretty solid as well. I think if a DB is there at 29 that they like, I think they take him. I think they take him, or they go another linebacker or some kind of defensive end or something like that. But I really think they touch the defensive side of the ball, and I would expect it to be the secondary.
All right, well, speaking of one of the players that you said, the Lions are great at the running back position because Jahmyr Gibbs had a monster rookie year, rushing for 945 yards, 10 touchdowns, and then added 52 receptions and 316 yards and a TD as well. It's quite the resume for his first season. How important is it to Gibbs and to the success that we see Jared Goff having on the field?
I mean, he came in and, he was super explosive at Alabama. I mean, I remember watching him play. And before I even knew who he was, like, man, this kid right here is pretty good. You know what I'm saying? And so then when the Lions took him, I was like, wow, that's a really good pick for them. And he came in and he didn't disappoint. He played well. I think people wanted him to get more touches early in the season, but I think the Lions did a great job of bringing him along slowly, controlling his workload, not putting too much on him early in the season, just allowing him to learn, to grow, to get his body ready to take on the punishment. I think him and David Montgomery complement each other really well. And so I think that has a lot to do with the success of the offense. He's so versatile, the many things that he can do. And I think they're only going to use him more in different situations in year 2. It's going to get more advanced, more complex for what they're doing with him, and it's only going to make it harder on the defense.
With the success that the Lions had last year with their recent campaign, going into next season, is 2024 kind of a Super Bowl or bust campaign?
from a grand scheme of things, I think with every team, it's kind of like Super Bowl or bust, right? You're trying to win the Super Bowl. But if we're talking from a morality standpoint, I don't know if it's Super Bowl or bust. You want to try to get back to where you were. You want to be consistent. You want to go back to back and win a division again. You don't want to have a drop off. You don't want to go from being in the NFC Championship game and next thing you know, you're not making the playoffs again, right? So you want to be competitive again this year and win the division, get into the playoffs. You do got to get back to hopefully to the same level that you were at last year, and then find a way to get over that hump.
Takes baby steps to get there, We're inching closer. Should Amon-Ra St. Brown be in the discussion for a top 5 receiver in the league?
I mean, I would have to say yes. I don't have all of the stats and the numbers of different people, but I just know he's been consistently playing well. He's put up plenty of numbers. He's been a cornerstone piece offensively for the Lions. Definitely he's one of those guys that you have to look at in the top 5. He does it week in and week out. I think when you look at the numbers, you look at his performance, you look at his team success, I think you got to put him up there in the top 5.
All right. Glover Quin, last question for you, and a very important question. Tell me why Detroit-style pizza takes the crown over New York or Chicago. Tell me why Detroit-style pizza is the best, and where are you taking me to get a slice?
When I was out in Detroit, I really only ate pizza at one place that I can remember, and it was actually really good. It was actually really good. I'm not a huge deep dish guy. Detroit-style pizza definitely is better than New York and Chicago, but I only really ate at one pizza place, and it was called Shields Pizza.
Shields Pizza. Listen, Shields Pizza. You heard it there first.
It was good.
You heard it there first.
It was good.
Glover Quin's favorite Detroit-style pizza place. Thank you so much, Glover, for your time.
Thank you. Thank you.
No team has had more press for doing less this offseason than the Cowboys. Jerry Jones and his team just seem to be stuck in neutral. To find out what the Cowboys need to do to get the franchise into gear, let's hear from Jeff Kavanaugh and Jesse Hawley from the Bleav in Cowboys podcast. Guys, what's going on in Dallas?
Thanks, Courtney. Now, Jesse, Cowboys getting ready to draft, and it is not a secret to the rest of the league what they need to do. I suppose, what are the dangers of that?
Yeah, the biggest thing, and you've talked about this at nauseum for the Cowboys, is going into the draft with draft needs or being able to draft best available player. And I think for the Cowboys right now, they have backed themselves into a corner. They have put themselves in a position where going into the draft, they have to go in there with very, very, very specific needs. And at times, you can sometimes chase players or over-evaluate players or maybe get a guy a little bit earlier than he's supposed to be gotten because of this glaring need that you have. Unlike other teams, when you're able to kind of sit back a little bit and go, hey, we're going to get to our number 24 pick, and we're going to be able to draft the best available player on our board. We don't have to go hunting. We don't have to go searching. We don't have to go overpaying people. We look at our board and we're saying, this is the highest rated player on our board. This is the guy that we're going to take, opposed to getting to that 24 spot. And it's like, I know that this is the highest player on our board, but the highest player on our board is a wide receiver. But we really, really, really need offensive linemen, linebackers, running backs, and a plethora of other positions. So I think the Cowboys have backed themselves into a corner that I know for you doesn't bode very well.
Yeah, Cowboys not trying their best during the offseason is an interesting approach. So let's see what offensive linemen they take at 24 because they have to. Back to you, Courtney.
Man, I have to agree with you guys. This team has put themselves in a very dangerous position, and their needs are glaring. It will be interesting to see how they navigate this draft. Some will say the Chargers won the offseason lottery when Jim Harbaugh signed on the dotted line. Now it's time to see what direction he intends to take his new team in. To take a look at the Chargers draft options, let's hear from Matt Money Smith and Lorenzo Neal from the Bleav in Chargers podcast. Guys, what do you got for me?
So here we are. We're at the 2024 draft, and the Chargers have an incredibly high pick, their highest pick since they took Justin Herbert at number 6 overall. They don't want to be back here anytime soon. They're going to get their hands on an elite player. Fans are freaking out. because of all the stuff that Jim Harbaugh's been talking about offensive line. There's so many people pointing out about how they are building this team, how they want to play football. So you've got two premium positions that are going to be available at pick number 5 and likely going to draw the interest of a lot of teams that would love to trade up. And that's something they're going to have to think long and hard about, Lorenzo, and that's stick and pick to take an elite, a super elite blue chip gold star player that someone's going to be pounding the table for, or do they take the draft capital and trade back and try to fill multiple positions on this team?
Yeah, for me, man, you look at this and you think about Jim Harbaugh. You think about, look at the way that he's thinking. This is going to be a line, offensive line or defensive line, somewhere in the trenches. I think just because they say that, I think they're trying to throw people off the scent. Because when you think about the receivers that left the building, you look at Keenan. Keenan was that position receiver. You can line him up anywhere, and he was a possession. You knew on third down, Keenan knew how to sit. He knew where to find those empty holes. He knew the space. Him and Justin was on the same page. That's why I'm thinking I'm going to go with Marvin Harris Jr. at number 5 when they're there, because of the fact, here's a guy that's got good bloodline. Here's a guy that you know that knows football, can easily slide in that role. If Herbert has a guy like that can stretch the field but do so many other things, and he's a great route runner and he's ready to go now, I'll go ahead and stick and stay and take Drew.
And I don't think anybody would be upset with that. You're talking about a wide receiver that, according to a lot of people that have been doing this for a long time, is the best wide receiver prospect they've seen in a decade.
All right, you heard it here first. Marvin Harrison Jr. to the Chargers. I would love to see Herbert to Harrison on the same team. I just don't see him sliding down to the 5th pick in the draft. But listen, on any given Sunday, you never know. A new era has begun in Foxborough. Bill Belichick has ridden off into the sunset, and the Gerard Mayo era has kicked off. Almost everyone has them going with a quarterback at number 3, but which quarterback is the big question? So to answer that question, let's hear from my friends up there in New England, Christopher Price and Chris Hogan from the Patriots Report.
Thank you very much, Courtney, and I trust that you have your birthday card in the mail for Bill Belichick, former Patriots coach. It's still strange to say that. His 72nd birthday was Monday. But let's look forward to this year's draft. The top 3 picks in this year's NFL draft. My take, I think, is going to be a little bit different than Chris, but I want to hear what Chris Hogan has to say here first.
I think it's pretty clear, clean cut, point blank, black and white, simple. I think that we've been talking about it for months now. Caleb Williams, Drake May, Jayden Daniels. I think those guys are going to be it. I just think that all 3 teams are really in the position to draft a quarterback and try to make, this statement where they're, drafting their franchise guy that they're going to be sticking with. I mean, obviously Chicago needs to be in that position. They just gave away their franchise quarterback that they drafted. But again, I think that these 3 kids, they've put enough on tape. They've done all the things that they've needed to do. And I think that it's going to be Caleb number 1 overall to Chicago. I think with the 2 and 3, I think both kids have had meetings with multiple teams, and I think everyone thinks very highly of them. How they do in the NFL, I still think is really a toss-up, but they obviously are phenomenal athletes, and I think Drake and Jayden obviously are going to be the 2nd and 3rd picks.
I'm going to flip it, and even though I think if you're a Patriots fan, you want Jayden Daniels, it's a home run pick. I think that you're going to see Jayden Daniels go number 2, and then Drake May go number 3 to New England. The first time since 2021 where the top 3 picks will all be quarterbacks. That's it for us here on the Patriots Report. Back to you, Courtney.
Okay, so our buddy Chris Hogan has Drake May going to the Commanders and Jayden Daniels coming to New England. Crossing my fingers. I would love to see that, but I'm having a hard time seeing Washington letting Daniels slip through their hands at number 2. But again, we shall see. Leading up to the drafts, Matt and Phil Simms have been ranking each quarterback in this draft and breaking down their pros and cons. But now it's time for the bigger question. How good is this class as a whole? Are they better than the 2004 class of Eli Manning, Phillip Rivers, and Big Ben? Let's see what they have to say.
What's happening with these quarterbacks? How many are going? The projections lately have been 5 to 6 in the first round. Will that actually come true this upcoming class? Leading up to it right now, would you think that this is one of the best draft classes that we've seen in a while as far as the 1 through 6 of Caleb Williams, Jayden Daniels, Michael Penix, Bo Nix, Drake May, and JJ McCarthy?
Well, I'd have to think about that a second. I'm not looking at it going, wow, this may be the greatest quarterback draft in history. That has never even crossed my mind. I can't even name them all anymore. But when Josh Allen came out with Baker Mayfield, and of course we can go back to Eli, Phillip Rivers, and Ben Roethlisberger, that was pretty good. And of course the other one, 1983, Dan Marino, Jim Kelly, just that whole
John
group.
Elway.
To me, that's probably the greatest quarterback draft that I can remember. When you're a quarterback in the NFL, year one is a great learning experience. And the game is, I don't care where you play and what you do in college, it's different. And you have to be more accurate than ever in the NFL. And some of these guys do have some things that would bother you a little, but hey, once you get in the league, that's your job, is to, improve, to change your throwing motion, to make it more efficient, to be better, to be a better quarterback. And somebody always says, maybe it was even one of my coaches, well, you just can't change a quarterback's mechanics. And then let me tell you, that is so wrong and so stupid. I don't know what to say. Of course you can.
And there you go. For a more in-depth analysis on all the quarterbacks in the draft, go check out the Sims Complete podcast on Bleav. Okay, it is time to play Pick 6 on the game plan. And this week, we are joined by one of my favorites, Lindsay Rhodes from the Bleav Fantasy Football Show. We're going to take a look at some of her final top 6 picks, or her favorites of this draft, which is coming up so very soon, later this week. Are you ready to play Pick 6 on the game plan?
Let's do it, absolutely.
Tell me a little bit about Caleb Williams and why he is your favorite of this year's draft, and I wonder why.
I mean, it's like super low-hanging fruit, right? Like, I'm not going to tell you anything that you haven't already heard about Caleb Williams, but I can't pass up the opportunity to talk about him because I can't tell you the number of times that I watched where I thought the play was dead. He was going to get sacked and nothing was coming from it. And he would be like surrounded by 3 guys, pocket collapses right away, and all of a sudden he spins out of it somehow, flushes out of the pocket, throws across his body with the defender in the face, off platform completely to the opposite sideline, and completes the play. I think he's a really, really special player. I think he is ready for the NFL. I think he can handle it mentally. I think his skills will translate. I think he's going to be very special.
Coming from an expert on Caleb Williams, I will take a check mark next to Caleb Williams. Next one on your list is Rome Odunze. Why is he on your favorites as part of this draft?
So there are 3 wide receivers at the top of the draft, obviously. We all know who they are, and I think that they're all hits. As much as I'm looking for high ceilings, I am also looking for high floors, and he checks both boxes for me. He is big. He is strong. His catch radius is huge. He wins on contested catches. He's good in space. He is an outstanding route runner. He tracks the ball like a center fielder. He is a complete wide receiver. Can't see it not working for him in the NFL. I'm so excited to see where he goes and also to draft him in fantasy. Love Rome Odunze.
Smart, good, well-mannered young man. We look forward to that as well. All right, next on your list, Malachi Corley.
Yeah, Malachi Corley is a guy that is maybe the more risky than I am usually comfortable with. But the thing about him is just the special, specific skill set. And I think that this is a guy who you could best describe as a weapon. Deebo Samuel's name comes up a lot when discussing him. He does so for good reason. He's like a running back wide receiver type of guy. I don't think he's yet reached his top potential. He's not a full route tree guy. That's something that maybe he can work on at the next level if he adds a few more routes that he can do successfully. But if not, then he does the thing he does really, really well.
I'll take a Western Kentucky wide receiver there with Malachi Corley. All right, moving on. Ladd McConkey. All the unique names here. Why is Ladd McConkey on your list?
So he's a guy that popped at the Senior Bowl, which I think is valuable. He's different than the other 2 wide receivers that I said. I think that he is a really strong complementary receiver, like a number 2 who's really consistent. He's dependable. I think he's more athletic also than he gets credit for. His short area quickness is really strong. His separation rate in college ranked 2nd. His receiving grade versus single coverage ranked 1st. His missed tackle rate was 3rd. I think he's a guy that you can put on the field early, either at flanker or in the slot, and get production out of him right away.
All right, moving on. You got 2 more on your list, Bucky Irving, and then another name that is really one of my favorites to say. It just rolls off the tongue. But let's start with Bucky Irving. Why is he one of your favorites this draft?
One of the things that Bucky Irving from Oregon that knocks against him that I think scares a lot of people is his size. He's not particularly big. We're talking like 5'9", 194, I think. That is coincidentally the same size as Kyren Williams. First of all, he's got that balance from the size that makes him tough to bring down. His missed tackles forced per attempt was in the 99th percentile in college. He had 1,800 yards after contact. He had the 5th highest rushing grade by PFF in his last 3 years. And I think that he is a guy who can do that if he goes to the right situation, and that's always important when you're talking about running backs. He's a guy that screams late round fantasy value to me.
The last player on your pick 6 list of your favorite players in the draft rolls right off the tongue. His name is Laiatu Latu.
From a defensive standpoint, Laiatu Latu, his name is fun to say. He's also very fun to watch. I would say that his arsenal is maybe as extensive as anyone that we've seen come out at his position in a long time. If the concerns are longevity, and the draft is a roll of the dice anyway, I think that I would rather roll my dice in the area of high-end talent for a short period of time than someone that just might not ever hit it all. So Laiatu Latu out of UCLA, I'm excited to see where he ends up.
Lindsay Rhodes, Bleav Fantasy Football Show. Go check it out. Hear all of her incredible and articulate insights. All right, thank you so much for joining Pick 6. We'll see you soon.
Thanks, Courtney.
Well, that's all the time we have on the game plan today. Go check out the Bleav Podcast Network for more in-depth analysis on every team in the league. And we will see you next week for our final show of Season 1 of the Game Plan.